Okay, so let's take a look at number 4, part A. So what I've got here is the calculated down payment. We subtract that from the cost of the house, and then this is the equation that we were working with in class. So if you want to maybe kind of think of these and order these for the operations you're going to put into your calculator. So 1 is going to be your items in parentheses down here, right? 2 is going to be the exponent. Okay, now after you get that decimal number, we're going to say 1 minus all of that number. And then you can also work with the numerator too. So let me show you on the calculator. The top part is probably the easier part. So I'm going to type in 119,605. Okay. I'm going to multiply that by this decimal, so 0.05. And then divide that answer by 12. Okay, so what that does is that simplifies the numerator. So I'm going to write that down. 498, and I'm keeping all these decimal places, and we'll round at the end of the problem. Okay, now I'm going to start working on the bottom. So I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to start with the fraction you see here. So 0.05 divided by 12. Okay. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to add 1, so plus 1. Now that gives me this decimal that has a lot of decimal places in it, but you can choose to write this down and then use your exponent, or we can get the calculator to do the work for us. So over to the side here, what I was saying in class was we know that 2 times 12 is 24, so if I put the 0 with the 2, that means I've got 240, and it's negative because of the negative sign here. So I want to tell the calculator to change this number and take an exponent on that number. So I'm hitting this key right here that says y to the x. Now it doesn't do anything, you won't notice anything, but it will give you the option next to enter your value. So I'm going to put 240. I want to make it negative, so I tap the key down here at the bottom, and then I hit equals. So what I just told the calculator to do was take our decimal from this entire set of parentheses and put the power negative 240 on that number. So this is what we get. All right, so let me write that in. Remember, this 1 is going to stay. I'm going to write in this new decimal. So 0.36864459. Okay. Now my next job is to actually simplify this fraction here. So I'm going to type into the calculator. I'm going to go with the 498 first. Okay, so I have that number in first. I'm going to tell it to divide, so tap this key. I'm going to use parentheses, and I'm going to put in what I have here. 1 minus 0.36864459. You always have to end a set of parentheses. Okay. Now this isn't your answer. What that tells me is that 0.63, that's this bottom portion. Okay. When I hit enter, the calculator will then divide 498 by 0.63. So watch what happens here. Enter. That gives me, and this is what we had in class, remember, 789. Now, the change or the decimal may be slightly different. Okay, so if yours looks a little bit different, that is okay, because you've probably, your calculator may round a little bit differently, or it may not give as many decimal places as I have here on this calculator, but it should be within a few pennies. All right, so I would say 789.34. All right, so that's question 4. Now let's go through question 5. So this, I talked about in class, this was kind of the opposite. Before we were finding the payment over here, and we knew the amount that we borrowed. In this one, we know the payment, but we don't know the amount to borrow. So again, we're going to start kind of working backwards. So I'm going to start with the set of parentheses, and then I'm going to do the exponent next. Remember, 12 times 30 is 360, and it's negative. Okay, so I'm going to let the calculator do all the work here. I'm going to start with the fraction. 0.05 divided by 12. Okay, so that takes care of this. I'm just going to cross these out as I use them. I'm going to add 1 to that, so plus 1. So I've used this number. Now I want my exponent to be negative 360. So this is what we do. Exponent key. Now yours may be different on if you're using a cell phone or a calculator that looks different. The exponent key might just be this little rooftop. Okay. All right, now I want to type in 360, but it needs to be negative, so I go to the bottom of my calculator. This is changing signs from positive to negative. Don't ever use a subtraction there. Always use this one. So that gives me 0.2238. So this decimal that I have in my calculator represents all of this, all the way out. I still need to put 1 minus that number. All right, so let's write down what we have. I'm going to take that calculator away. 1 minus. Now, I left a space up here because I still need to put in 0.05 divided by 12. And probably, like I mentioned in class, you're going to have this memorized at some point, but 0.05 divided by 12, 0.0041. There we go. Okay, now I need to simplify in the bottom of my fraction because I have a subtraction. So I still have 750. I'm carrying everything with this equation that I can at this point. And the new value that is my denominator is 0.776173. Okay, now at this point you have a couple of options, but my advice is to make the calculator do the work for you. That's less on you and probably less chance you'll write down a number wrong. So to get P isolated by itself, I want to multiply this denominator over here, so think of like cross multiplying, and then I want to divide by this decimal. So it's 2 steps. So I already have my decimal here in the calculator, the 0.776. I'm going to say let's multiply that by 750. And then I want to divide that. Now if you notice, at this point I've got 582. That can't be my answer because I'm looking for an amount that I'm going to borrow from the bank. I wouldn't borrow $582. Okay, I'm borrowing enough to buy a house. So the next step, and this one is a division. So I take the answer on my calculator, which in this case it would look like this. Okay, and I'm going to divide 582 by this number here. So 0.0041. Now that gives us a much larger number, which makes more sense, okay? So I have 139,711. And I'm going to say this again about the decimal. It's 0.20. If yours is 21 or 22 or 19, it's probably because your calculator's rounding just a tad differently with some of these other numbers, and that's okay. I'm going to give you some leeway on that. So this means the amount you could borrow if you could afford $750 per month is $139,711.20. All right, hope this helps.